The carjacker who attacked me is the only reason I survived my mechanic's brake line sabotage. I was 3 blocks from home when the guy jumped into my passenger seat at the red light. He had a knife, and his hand was shaking so badly I thought he might drop it. He told me to drive and keep my mouth shut. I pressed the gas pedal and nothing happened. The engine revved, but the car barely moved forward. He pressed the knife closer to my ribs and screamed at me to drive faster. I pushed the pedal to the floor and we lurched ahead maybe 15 miles per hour. He looked confused. I was confused. My car had been running perfectly when I picked it up from the shop that morning. The light turned green and cars behind us started honking. He grabbed my shirt and yelled that I was trying to get us caught. I swore I wasn't doing anything wrong. The car just wouldn't accelerate. We crawled through the intersection and he kept looking back at the cars piling up behind us. His panic was making him sloppy. The knife wavered and I thought about grabbing it, but I'm not that kind of person. I teach history at the community college. I've never been in a fight, so I just kept driving at this pathetic speed while he cursed and threatened me. We made it 2 more blocks before he told me to pull over. I did, and he jumped out, still holding the knife, and ran down an alley. I sat there shaking and watching him disappear. I called the police from the side of the road. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I held the phone. The operator asked if I was hurt, and I said no, just scared. She told me to stay in the car with the doors locked until officers arrived. I sat there for 12 minutes watching people walk past on the sidewalk like nothing had happened. 2 patrol cars pulled up and 3 officers got out. The first one asked me to describe what happened. I told him about the carjacking and the knife and how my car wouldn't accelerate properly. He looked at my vehicle and asked when I last had it serviced. I said this morning at Precision Auto on Maple Street. The officer's expression changed. He asked me to repeat the name of the shop. I said it again, and he exchanged a look with his partner. The second officer walked around my car and crouched down near the rear wheel. He stood up and told the first officer to call for a tow truck immediately. I asked what was wrong. The second officer said my brake line was cut almost completely through. If I'd been driving at normal speed and tried to brake, the line would have severed and I would have had no way to stop. The reality hit me slowly. The carjacker's attack had saved my life. If he hadn't jumped in at that red light and forced me to realize something was wrong with my car, I would have driven onto the highway. I would have merged into traffic going 70 miles per hour. Eventually, I would have needed to brake. The line would have snapped. I would have crashed into whatever was in front of me with no way to slow down. The officer asked if anyone had reason to hurt me. I said no. I lived alone. I didn't have enemies. I was recently divorced, but it had been amicable. My ex-wife Melanie had moved to Oregon 6 months ago, and we barely spoke anymore. The officer wrote everything down in his notebook. He asked about the mechanic shop. I explained that I'd taken my car there 3 times in the past 2 months. Oil change, tire rotation, and this morning for a brake inspection because I'd been hearing a squeaking noise. The officer asked if the same person worked on my car each time. I said yes, a guy named Derek Finch. He was the owner and usually the only mechanic there when I came in. The officer wrote down Derek's name and underlined it twice. They towed my car to the police impound lot for examination. An officer drove me home and told me someone from the detective division would contact me tomorrow. I walked into my apartment and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. The carjacker had probably saved my life without meaning to. If my car had been working normally, I would have driven him wherever he wanted, and he would have eventually let me go, or worse. But because the brake line was damaged, the car barely moved, and he panicked and ran. That malfunction kept me from getting on the highway where I would have died in a crash. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Someone had tried to kill me. Someone had deliberately cut my brake line knowing I would drive that car today. Derek Finch had been alone with my vehicle for 3 hours this morning. He'd called me at noon to say the brake inspection was complete and everything looked good. He'd charged me $80, and I'd thanked him and driven away in a death trap. I thought about Derek. He was maybe 40, thin build, always wearing the same greasy coveralls. He seemed normal, quiet, efficient, fair prices. I'd recommended him to 2 colleagues after my first visit because he'd fixed my transmission issue for half what the dealership quoted. Detective Carla Bennett called me at 8 the next morning. She asked if I could come to the station to give a formal statement. I drove there in a rental car, and she met me in the lobby. She was maybe 50 with short gray hair and tired eyes that suggested she'd seen too much. She led me to an interview room and we sat across from each other at a metal table. She asked me to walk through everything again from the beginning. When I told her about Derek, things took a turn I never expected. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.